IndiGo, because of that sheer arrogance, that they thought they're so big and so influential in the market that if they delay it or if they show reluctance and if they lobby, they will be able to get away with it. And the DGCA will step back and not implement these rules. But I think they got it wrong. So they did not recruit enough number of pilots, and they did not start the induction of pilots well in time, because that takes a lot of time to induct pilots. Then even if you have the pilots, they had to get trained in India and with the DGCA new rules and regulations. They had to get accommodated here, and then they need even 100 hours. Even if you are already an Air Force captain, veteran award-winning captain, you need another 100 hours to become a captain. If you get foreign pilots, it requires security clearance for 3 months. It's very, very elaborate.
So you're suggesting that IndiGo deliberately failed to comply. Arrogance led them to believe that they could get away with it.
Yeah, they thought that, they're so big that the DGCA will not dare to implement the rules. And so they just took it easy.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Today we focus on the dismal state of IndiGo Airlines and the way in which it has crippled domestic air travel in the country. Has IndiGo been inefficient and irresponsible? Should it be disciplined for this? And what about the responsibility of the DGCA and the Ministry of Civil Aviation? To help us understand, I'm now joined by the founder of Air Deccan, Captain G.R. Gopinath. Captain Gopinath, yesterday IndiGo Airlines cancelled more than 1,000 flights, leaving nearly 2 lakh passengers stressed and stranded. Day before that, it cancelled 500 flights. The day before that, it cancelled between 2 and 300. Can you start by explaining to the audience why IndiGo Airlines is in such a mess? What's gone wrong?
I think, to put it straight and bluntly, is I think arrogance, hubris. The airline has, on the one hand, it had a flawless, blemishless track record. It's grown into a massive mammoth airline, even by global standards. 428 airlines, very impressive. Young aircrafts, spotless and clean. On-time operations, good service, efficient service. All these at a market cap which is stratosphere of $20 billion. I think the third or fourth largest airline in the world in market cap. So all these are impressive, and you have to commend them. I can't take away from that. But however, when an airline becomes that big, both by sometimes policies and often because the other airlines, and they get into trouble, even though we have the bankruptcy code, the government doesn't rescue the jobs in the airline. Instead, they go after the promoters, mistaking the promoter to be the airline, and ignore the infrastructure and jobs, which was what happened to Kingfisher and the Jet Airways and the Go Air. So those airlines went bankrupt, and IndiGo was having good operations. So people flocked to IndiGo. Along with that, you had SpiceJet, which shrank from 100 to 20 aircrafts. Air India, even after acquisition of Tata, was doddering and crumbling. And after the accident of the Ahmedabad flight to London, I think the concern of safety became very, very important. And the pilot lobby, which was already lobbying from many years that the flight duty limitations are not in consonance with international standards and they're being stressed. I think finally the airline saw the truth. And
Can I interrupt at that point? You're
Yes.
sketching out to the audience all the reasons and explanations why IndiGo has become a dominant airline. It dominates 60% of Indian domestic air travel. A whole set of circumstances is responsible for that. But that position as a near monopoly also means that it should be a much more responsible airline. Now, the flight duty time limitations, which is what IndiGo has been unable to comply with, were notified in May 2024, giving IndiGo 20 months to prepare.
Yeah.
Was that long enough for the airline to prepare? Or has it been inefficient, and more importantly, has it been irresponsible?
It was not inefficiency, because IndiGo is known for efficiency. And that's the reason I set out the earlier preamble. Though Air India has other problems, they have complied with it. Akasha and Spice has different problems, they have complied with it. IndiGo, because of that sheer arrogance, that they thought they're so big and so influential in the market that if they delay it or if they show reluctance and if they lobby, they will be able to get away with it. And the DGCA will step back and not implement these rules. But I think they got it wrong. So they did not recruit enough number of pilots, and they did not start the induction of pilots well in time, because that takes a lot of time to induct pilots. Then even if you have the pilots, they have to get trained in India and with the DGCA new rules and regulations. They have to get accommodated here. And then they need even 100 hours, even if you're already an Air Force captain, veteran award-winning captain, you need another 100 hours to become a captain. If you get foreign pilots, it requires security clearance for 3 months. It's very, very
So
elaborate.
you're suggesting that IndiGo deliberately failed to comply. Arrogance led them to believe that they could get away with it.
Yeah, they thought that, they're so big that the DGCA will not dare to implement the rules. And so they just took it easy. And I think also...
So this is irresponsibility. Clear irresponsibility.
Absolutely irresponsible and hubris. And one more thing is that, see, they should have had the humility to talk to the flight operations, head of flight operations, the flight operations crew, the rostering people, because they're the ones who will give you the real feedback. You should have the atmosphere where they can tell you the truth, because only when you listen to them, you'll be able to do it, because they were in the habit of arm twisting and getting away.
You're suggesting that the airline management did not talk effectively and efficiently and sufficiently to their own rostering crew.
That seems very obvious, because they're a very efficient airline, because you wouldn't have grown to 420 aircrafts in a tough market with their Indian DGCA. All regulators are, nobody likes them, but Indian DGCA is little more cumbersome. But in this instance, the DGCA spoke to all the stakeholders, because I spoke to all the other airline captains, airline senior management. They all, probably they were already under various other kinds of setbacks. They implemented this. And the third is that,
I'm stopping you on purpose, because you're making a few very important points, and I want to underline them for the audience. You're saying the basic problem is arrogance, hubris, and irresponsibility. IndiGo, because of its size, believed that it could actually get away without implementing the new flight duty time limitations. It thought it could virtually bully the DGCA into accepting that it hadn't done it and it was okay not to do it. That is a very grave charge you're making, but that is what you're saying.
I think it's obvious to anybody. You talk to any pilot, any senior captain, either in IndiGo or in other airlines, they'll tell you the same thing. But because to give credit to DGCA in this instance, what should have happened 7, 8, 9 years ago, and finally the DGCA woke up to it, and 20 months, because before they implement a rule, they always send a draft rules. Then when the draft rules are sent, all airlines and stakeholders are given an opportunity to represent, including the pilot bodies. Then after all that is done, then a rule is made. And this rule, which the DGCA has now made, is in consonance with the ICAO. That is the apex
And the
body.
more important point is that IndiGo and all the other airlines had 20 months notice.
Yeah. And also, I think...
Tell me something. Was 20 months long enough to prepare?
Absolutely, because firstly, all the information which is also available in the public domain suggests that IndiGo not only did not recruit more number of pilots well in time, because it takes time, and even if you have the pilots to integrate the software with the data, because the software is all outsourced, and they're all mega companies who are giving software to all over the world. So when you come and say, look, this is the new rules of the Indian DGCA, which is not exactly what it was before. There's a lot of changes. It is also not exactly what is there in FAA, or the American, or the EASA, which is European, which are the world's largest airlines are there in these two countries, USA and America. Then the software company has to get the data of how many hours every pilot has flown, and then integrate that into the software. That takes time.
And
you have to
IndiGo
train your staff.
And IndiGo didn't give sufficient time for that to happen either.
I think IndiGo is complacent, because they also, were galloping by increasing aircrafts, which is good in a way, but at the same time...
Let me interrupt you and put this to you. There's a second aspect of the crisis that has hit IndiGo and therefore has hit Indian domestic air travel over the last few days. That is to say, the scenes we saw on television of passengers stranded at the airport for 8, 9, 10, 11 hours without water, without food, and without any adequate response from IndiGo ground staff. We saw IndiGo ground staff looking helpless, looking in fact clueless. As someone who's run an airline himself, how incompetent, in fact, how unforgivable was IndiGo's treatment of these stranded passengers?
I think it's snowballed, and the mayhem, became a meltdown so suddenly, which always happens because the airline is so big. It has a way of, snowballing. It happened in America and once earlier, but they quickly recovered. But here, I think they also had huge problem, because they were not able to figure out which pilot can fly the next day. Because if they had given enough time to the flight operations department and said, look, the top management, yes, we will do it, they would have done it. And I think, when there are less number of pilots flying more number of hours, is more cash for the airline. Most airlines are reluctant to do it.
But what about the treatment of passengers at the airport? Focus on that for a moment, Captain Gopinath. These were people through no fault of their own, had paid for tickets, were stuck for 9, 10, 11 hours, no food, no water, and worse still, the airline ground staff looked clueless and helpless.
Yes, because I remember one Air Force officer called me at about late in the night and begged me, saying that my daughter is getting married in Bangalore. Day after tomorrow morning is my flight. I'm booked with 15 tickets. My daughter has come from USA. I've been grounded. Now, when you call somebody, because I knew people there, they're very helpful. But the crisis was so big, they were not able to in a position to predict. They were not in a position to predict
That's the
which captain.
explanation. But the IndiGo staff were not even looking helpful. They were actually clueless at the airport.
So because as I said earlier, this arrogance had crept in. It was obvious from the last 3-4 years. This arrogance had crept in IndiGo over the time, because that comes from the top of the management.
Let me put something else to you. Given that IndiGo represents 60% of domestic airline traffic and is close to a monopoly, shouldn't the DGCA, in fact, shouldn't the Ministry of Civil Aviation have been monitoring IndiGo's compliance with the new FDTL rules? Did the DGCA, did the ministry fail to monitor that?
I'm not sure DGCA failed to monitor it. There could obviously be some way of monitoring that. But I think when you are given a rule and given 20 months time, and if the airline expects that somehow they will ensure that it is not enforced, I think they got it wrong this time.
But shouldn't the ministry have been monitoring to check whether the airline is actually implementing the rules?
See, typically what happens is that when you are not having sufficient crew to implement the new rules, the airline always voluntarily ensures that it doesn't violate or transgress the safety regulations, because the penalties are quite high, especially in the foreign countries, and even in India they have been doing it. So it's unthinkable that they force the pilots to fly.
But I'm asking a different question. Given that the airline IndiGo represents 60% of domestic air travel and is virtually a monopoly, is it not incumbent on the DGCA and the Ministry of Civil Aviation to keep monitoring? Is this airline in a compliance with the rules? Is it recruiting enough staff to be able to follow the rules after 20 months? None of that checking, none of that monitoring was done. Why wasn't it done?
Yeah, I think there is probably some kind of a complicity at some staff level, because obviously the
Are you saying DGCA staff level?
Yeah, DGCA staff level, because ultimately when the airline is so big, they have tremendous influence, right? And everybody also then gets carried away that if IndiGo says no, then how can we do it? Because the airline will collapse. So you are too big to fail.
So in other words, the DGCA allowed itself to be brought under pressure by IndiGo because of IndiGo's size and IndiGo's influence.
Yeah, that is, in a sense, the catastrophe of IndiGo became a catastrophe of India, which is unfortunate because of the monopoly that had got created, which should not have been allowed in the first place.
Tell me this. In response, the DGCA has now delayed the implementation of the FDTL rules till the 10th of February. Given that these were designed to prevent pilot and crew fatigue and therefore maintain flight safety, is it wise to postpone the implementation? Won't that have implications for passenger safety?
See, the Indian Pilots Association has already written to the DGCA objecting to the relaxation of the rules, because the Pilot Association body has for long been putting pressure and lobbying with the DGCA to bring their flight duty limitations in consonance with the international ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization rules, and the American rules, and this one. But I think
now that's been postponed. That's been postponed for 2 months. Yeah. Is it not irresponsible to do that?
I think they have succumbed to pressure more from the public sympathy. I feel that.
But is the DGCA wise to postpone it? Is the DGCA wise to postpone the implementation to the 10th of February?
I think it also sends a wrong signal, because the airlines which comply and the other airline which did not comply because they can make more money with less number of pilots, and thereby putting the stress on pilots and their safety of the airline, mental stress on the pilots. After the Air India crash, they should have put the foot down and they should not have extended. Though while I
So you're
admire,
saying to me,
one
so
second,
you're saying to me the decision to postpone the implementation of the FDTL rules till the 10th of February is a wrong decision.
is a wrong decision. While I admire that they did not succumb to pressure before in not implementing it, because there's a lot of pressure from the airline not to enforce it, especially from IndiGo, but the DGCA went through with it.
And now they postponed it.
Now they have postponed it because I think there is a huge trauma in the airport. But personally, I feel this should not have been done because it sends a wrong signal, and God forbid nothing should happen.
Tell me, the truth is, IndiGo probably needs to recruit hundreds, if not thousands, of pilot and crew to be compliant with the new FDTL rules. Can they do that between now and the 10th of February? Or have we simply kicked the can down the road, and will the same problem occur in February?
See, everybody in aviation knows, if you're in aviation, that inducting a pilot, India has a huge number of pilots who are unemployed, and IndiGo could have recruited them, and the DGCA also should make the recruitment of pilots a little more simpler than let's say, for example, I'll just give a simple example.
But answer my question. Can this be done by the 10th of February? Recruit the hundreds, if not thousands of pilots needed, the crew that's needed? Or are we kicking the can down the road, and will the problem happen again in February?
I think, IndiGo is already a shortage of, already they were short of pilots. Now with the new regulations, they will need more number of pilots because the low-cost airlines fly more number of hours than, say, Air India or British Airways. They'll need at least about 13 pilots per aircraft, as I said. And with these new rules, I think it's almost impossible to do it by February.
So the problem will recur in February?
I think this problem will recur, in my opinion.
Tell me this. The CEO of the company, of IndiGo, has said that normal operations will only happen after the 10th, maybe after the 15th of December. That means this chaos is going to continue possibly for another week, maybe another 9 days. Is that acceptable?
It's not acceptable. I think he himself admitted, as the CEO in yesterday's his own statement, which I read in Hindustan Times and other papers, that it's an unforgivable mistake. After 19 years, all the reputation that built up has gone down the gutters. They never anticipated it. And it's a combination of factors that created it. See, also, they remember, this is another important point why I'm stressing on that. IndiGo has gone on a massive expansion of overseas. And because of the fact that they realized that Air India is struggling, it is almost doddering. They went and acquired Boeing 777s, Boeing 787s, and started long-haul wide-body international flights. They ordered 350 Airbuses. This is exactly what Jet Airways did. So all their focus of the top management did not go down to the boring nitty-gritties of these kind of things that I'm talking about, FDTL and other things. So
if this is a management problem, and you're clearly suggesting it is, should the CEO be sacked, or should he resign and accept responsibility?
I think the board should take the responsibility, because the CEO will do what the board says.
The whole board should be sacked.
I don't know how they should take the responsibility and act accordingly, because they always follow the mandate of the board. If the CEO had been told, and if the CEO doesn't have the guts to tell the board that you are on a suicidal course, this is not going to work, or even this FDTL, if he had put his foot down, I think the board would have listened, or they would have sacked the CEO. But very often people don't speak the truth.
But you're suggesting to me that the CEO failed to stand up to the board.
CEO failed to stand up to the board, and I think the board itself, because let's also admire and what earlier Gangwal and Rahul Bhatia did. Now that there is one CEO who's totally managing director, who's now chairman, who's completely calls the shots. He should have sent the right message after he lost
But
Rakesh
you're
Gangwal.
making a case for the CEO to accept responsibility and step aside, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you agree, the CEO should step aside?
CEO should step aside because he should have stood up to the board and said this should not be done in the way we are doing.
Tell me this, Captain Gopinath. How much damage has been done to the reputation of the airline? Airlines, perhaps more than most other service industries, critically depend upon their reputation, their image. How much damage has been done over the last few days to IndiGo's image and reputation, and can it recover, or is that impossible?
I think if definitely, I mean, it is obvious they have lost whatever they have built. They lost in just these last 2 days. The CEO himself admitted, "I feel terrible that all the great work done in 19 years we lost it in 1 day." But it is also a lesson for the other airlines, including IndiGo itself. They should be humble. They have built an absolutely enviable track record without any fatal accidents, barring incidents which have started recurring in IndiGo also in the last 3-4 years. They had a lot of minor incidents and accidents, no fatal accident. That was already a wake-up call. I had written about it. It was already a wake-up call. They should now be humble, put their nose to the grinding wheel, and rethink their strategy to expand.
Is the damage done to the airline recoverable, or is it now too late to hope?
Recoverable. It will take time. It's recoverable provided that they show the humility and understand what mistakes they made, talk to the people down below, get their feedback, because they are the people who will give you the absolute truth. The people who are in the rostering, people who are in the
My last question, Captain Gopinath. Given that this has happened because of the near monopoly situation that IndiGo enjoys, how do we tackle that situation? How do we ensure that IndiGo does not remain a near monopoly where it can hold the DGCA up effectively to ransom?
I think in all sectors, either a duopoly or a monopoly is the recipe for disaster. And any kind of monopoly is not only destructive, a setback for the country, it will also destroy the monopoly itself.
So how do we end this situation? How do we get out of this monopoly situation?
The government should ask, how do we have more play? We need private sector, but not private sector cartelization. How do we ensure monopolies are not allowed? They should ensure.
This is another lapse on the part of the government. They allowed a monopoly to happen.
Not only this government, many governments, even earlier.
This government has been there for 11 years. So this government is mainly responsible because the monopoly situation happened over the last 11 years.
Yeah, but IndiGo had already become a monopoly before Modi came. And it is continued. And I think we have to have oversight on that to ensure that there is no monopoly in any sector.
Okay.
That is the answer to India.
Captain Gopinath, thank you very much for the time you've given me. Thank you for sharing your views about the crisis in IndiGo Airlines and the crisis that has crippled the Indian domestic air market over the last few days. I'm deeply grateful to you. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, Karan. Bye. Happy.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.